Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yay.
Hi.
Hi.
That is amazing.
Oh, now I can see you.
Oh, that is amazing.
How are you all doing?
Thank you.
Hey.
Hi,
Hi, how are you?
Lorna. Good. I'm Princess. I don't know if we ever really met face to face.
Not officially. Look, if we can call this face to face.
Oh, I love it. Oh,
Yes.
that's Zoom. That's a nice application.
You never heard of Zoom?
No.
Oh, yeah, it's really nice.
Okay.
Really nice. So you all ready to get started?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
I started off by just telling the group a little bit about what we're doing. So maybe you could start, from your, we went over the pointers you sent.
Yes.
And which was really good. And so it's 4 of us today. So maybe everybody can introduce themselves to you.
Okay.
We're missing about 3 other people.
Okay.
But I'm so excited. I just wanted to go ahead and get started. Okay.
Sounds good.
I can see that it is.
Yeah, she can see you. Can you see all 4 of us, Lorna?
Cut off on this side.
Oh, I see.
Yes, now I see you.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay.
So are we all authors?
Yes.
Okay. Already published, or we working towards it?
Yeah.
Working towards.
Working towards it. Oh, well, great. So this presentation hopefully will give you the extra boost that you need to get on out there and get it done.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do, because I'm in the presentation, it kind of goes through who I am and all of that good stuff. So I'm just going to jump into the presentation, and I'm going to share my screen with you so you'll be able to see the presentation. So I'm going to do that now. So you may not see me for a minute.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, now it's a double screen.
Is that 8? That's 8? 8 tips? Yeah, 8 tips. Yeah, 8 tips.
Okay, can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay. So what it is 8 tips to start writing your best-selling novel. And these are just 8 general tips that you would need in order to, what really is to get you started. But if you've already started, it's still good tips to keep in mind as you go along the way. So this presentation is for you if you're tired of talking about writing that book and you're just ready to get it done. If you're ready to introduce yourself to the world as a published author, you're tired of aspiring, it's time to be published. And if you want to be an example for everybody around you who have dreams and have goals, and show them what you did. You had a dream and a goal of writing your book and you did it. So, you can motivate other people. These are just general questions if this sounds like you. If you're always talking about this book idea. If you get excited about writing and then you're all pumped up and then nothing happens. Or if you really don't even know where to start. Maybe you sit down to write and there's nothing comes out. Or maybe you wrote a book before and you're just not sure how to have it published. Or if you can't seem to make your story flow. Because some people get started and then you get stuck. If you can't seem to bring your characters to life. Let me ask you this. Is everyone writing fiction books, or are y'all all like different genres?
I'm fiction. I mean, yeah, I'm fiction. You're nonfiction. No, I'm sure it's non.
Fiction.
Okay.
Not nonfiction, but protecting their names.
Say it again.
It's fiction. It's nonfiction.
Okay.
But
okay.
The names so that it may come across as fiction.
Gotcha. Okay. with fiction or nonfiction. So maybe it's you don't know how to thicken the plot, because no matter what you're writing, you still want your story, even if it's not a general plot, you still want it to be interesting enough where people are going to keep reading your book. Because hopefully you won't stop at one. What I found is once you get started, those ideas are going to continue to flow, and before you know it, you'll be like me, have 3 or 4 books published. Maybe you can't seem to squeeze writing into your already busy schedule. Or you're not really sure if the story idea that you have is marketable enough. Or maybe you're constantly questioning, can you really pull this off? And let me tell you now, yes, you can pull this off. Because we all have a story inside of us somewhere. So in the next 60 minutes, I'm gonna just show you, and it probably won't be 60 because I know you all only meet for what, an hour or two? Okay, so I'm gonna just skip through and get to the main parts. Since you all have already written. So once you develop the right mindset, you'll have clarity on the story you want to tell and how to develop it into a best-selling novel, and to make sure it's right for your ideal reader. Because when I first started out, the first time someone asked me, well, who is this story for? My answer was, it's for everybody. Everybody would love this book. I love it. The more I wrote and the more I learned, I realized that, no, your book is not for everybody. So you have to be clear on who is this book for, so that the language represents who the book will be for, and your characters are someone they can relate to. The story that you're telling and the way that you're telling it is in a way that they can relate to, depending on who the story is for. Once you have the right mindset, you will also feel more confident in your ability to write your book. Because if you don't have the confidence to write it, then 9 times out of 10, you won't finish it. You have to be confident that this is the book. This is what I'm meant to write. And you'll master the art of developing the plot and creating your characters that will draw your readers in and leave them craving for more of your story. So that's just me. I skipped that, but I was a kindergarten teacher. Now I am a instructional specialist, and I'm gonna go back. I've been published. I self-published my first book in 2009. Actually, it was 2 books. I did a novel and I did a daily devotional, years worth of daily readings, both in 2009. I went from selling very little, like very, very little, to being on the bestsellers list by my 3rd book. But that's because I just learned so much about the craft of writing, because you do have to constantly learn and grow. I really just felt like it was a gift that God had given me, and I just ran with it. I still know it was a gift that he gave me, but I also know that with any gift that he gives us, he means for us to grow into it and continue to learn and to prosper from it. So throughout that time, I have spent more time taking workshops and going to trainings and webinars and doing all these things, reading books in order to help me to become a better writer. And I've also coached authors along the way. Okay, so now I'm gonna get straight to our 8 points, which point number 1 is to start where you're inspired. In terms of where do I start writing this story? You start writing the story wherever you feel inspired. And what I mean by that is you don't have to write in chronological order. You don't have to think about how's this story supposed to start. Maybe that's not the idea you have in your head right now. Maybe the idea you have, maybe the beginning of the story, the end of the story, or the middle of the story. Whatever it is, start writing it, because that's the idea that sparked your interest in the first place. So when you get that story idea, when you get that scene in your head, just sit down, write it out. Everything else will come together. So don't worry so much about how should I start it off, how should I end it. All of those things come the more you write. Like I said earlier, the more you write, the more the ideas will flow. Research shows that only 3% of aspiring authors actually finish their books. And I believe it's because they get stuck. They're not really sure where to go with the story, or they're not really sure how to start the story. So like I said, that's why it's important that whatever fueled you to begin writing this story, that's where you should begin. That's where you should start. And even if you start writing a story and you're stuck on, you don't know where to go from there, but you do have more ideas, write those ideas. Go on and write whatever is coming in your head. Because remember, your first draft of your story is going to be garbage. Let me tell you. It is not supposed to be good, because the purpose of the first draft is just to get it out. You have to get it out. If it's stuck in your head, it's not allowing those ideas to flow. So write. No matter what, just write. You will figure it out. You'll piece it together. You'll know what goes where, and that's the beauty of having an editor. They will help you through that process. So don't stress about it, just write it. That's the most important thing. So separate yourself from the other 97% who don't finish their books. I love that quote by Steve Jobs, is to think different. Think different. However, whatever you've been thinking that's prolonged you from telling this story, change that and start thinking different, that you can do this, because you really can. I'm a firm believer that if you have the idea, you are meant to do something with it. It is not meant to just stay in you. So just start is the biggest thing you should get from this point. Just start. Anything, you have any questions about that?
No.
Okay. So because I'm an educator, I do give homework. And the first writing exercise is what I said, just sit down and whatever idea it is, go ahead and write it. Don't worry about where it's going to be placed in your story. Just go ahead and write it. Okay. So the second, this is a friend of mine, actually. We became close throughout the process, but she has a story of her health. She's been going through a lot with her health journey, and she really wanted to write this book because she felt like it could help a lot of women. But like a lot of people who feel like, oh, I really want to tell this story, but I'm not an author. I don't know how to write this story. She and I started working out together. And every time she would tell this story, there was one particular part of her story, of her journey, that would really, you could just see it in her eyes. She was excited about telling that story, about that part. So that was her assignment. When you go home, start there. And now she's finishing up her book because she started. And once she started, she had questions along the way, but she didn't feel like, I don't know what to do now, because she wrote and she was able to keep going. So your tip number 2 is to observe. Authors are very, very observant. Why? Because story ideas are all around you if you pay attention to your surroundings. So you have to learn to turn off the inside noise and focus, which is hard. I know it was hard for me. Because you don't know, you could be missing a conversation, you could be missing some type of action that could help you. Maybe it's something that you could use with your characters. It could be a description. It could be something that someone said that you think would really fit into your story, a phrase. But if you don't pay attention, you'll miss it. So while you're out, it's very important to be observant of everything around you. Most stories begin with a what if. That's how most story ideas come about. What if? And then you go from there. So when I was looking at this picture, what if? Everything started coming to my head. What if these two ladies are actually sisters and don't know it? What if the lady in the background that's on the phone could be related to one of them? It could be someone that she's been looking for all this time, and there she is right there, and she doesn't know it. What is all these what if ideas that you could start with a story, because you can keep that going. So a lot of your story ideas, like I said, it's going to start with a what if. Ignore the what ifs. Write them down because you may use them one day. So your homework assignment number 2 is be observant and think of some what ifs. Either while you're watching television, because there's nothing new. Nothing is new under the sun. You could be reading a book and think of an idea. You could be watching a TV show and think of an idea. But you have to put yourself in that state of mind of writing and creating, really. You have to put yourself in the state of mind to be creative and ways that you can make it different for you. Which brings me to tip number 3, to think outside the box. When you are, especially when you first starting out, because like I said, hopefully this will not be your last story, your last book. So when you are trying to think of, and so, because sometimes you have the desire to write, but the desire comes before the story. And if that's the case, then you think outside the box for story ideas. Story ideas come from the most unusual places sometimes, such as advice columns. I don't know if they still have the Dear Ann and Ann Landers, and I think that's her name. Dear Abby, the Dear Abby columns. I know they still have some online. If you go Google advice columns, people ask some strange questions that could be a story. Blogs, especially if you're doing a nonfiction book, I would highly recommend going to blogs and researching and reading different advice or different stories that you could use. Of course, make sure you credit them in your book, but it could help you with your story. Oh my gosh, the Bible. We know that the Bible, there are some stories in the Bible that would be really good if they were told in today's time too. The story of the Virgin Mary. If that was told today, that would be a really good story. But if you're going to tell that story today, it would have to be something that caused so much conflict that she was about to lose something, or it threatened her life. Like something would have to come from the fact that she's pregnant and either her husband is away on tour, or maybe her husband passed away and she's pregnant. Could be his baby. How did she get that baby? It's a gift from God, but how does she explain to these people that it's a gift from God without having everybody look at her crazy? Like, if you just read, or I'm pretty sure you know Bible stories, nothing is new under the sun. You can use those and make them more modern day. People watching is that you get stories from some people, because there are some strange people. Use them in your story. Listen to music. Music is a book made with a tune, or a story with a tune. That's all music is. It's a story. Writing prompts are very good. The news, there's always stories on the news that you can use, especially the world news, that you can use in your story, in your book. So tip number 4, you have to train your brain for writing. This one will not only help you with writing, this one will help you with anything that you are thinking about doing that's different from your norm. Anything that you want to do outside of your norm, whether it's start an exercise regimen, whether it's eating healthier, no matter what, changing your job, you have to train your brain for that. And this is why. Soon as it goes. Your brain is wired for failure. But it's not on purpose, because your brain is wired to protect you. And anything different to the brain feels like fear, because the brain really can't distinguish between fear and excitement. Those two feelings are the same thing. So if you're fearful of something or if you're excited about it, the brain's job is to tell you, wait a minute, this is not what we do. Maybe you should go watch television because that's normal for us. Maybe you should eat this food because that's normal for us. So the brain's job is to keep you in a comfortable place, because comfort means not dangerous to the brain. So in order to really, really get focused on writing, in order to make writing a part of your daily habit, you have to train your brain for that, because otherwise the brain is going to tell you everything else you should be doing besides writing. And the only way you can do that really is by writing. Okay, I skipped something. Maybe not. Anyway, the only way to do that is to write. You have to write, because then it becomes more familiar. Just like I'm sure you've heard of people who started working out, and the more they worked out, they almost became addicted to working out. But that's because at that point, the brain was comfortable with this new routine that we have going on. So it craves it. It wants to do it. So in order for you to make writing a part of your daily life, you have to write. That's the only way you can do it. So if you recognize that writing, making up stories, coming up with stories isn't a new experience, that's another way to help the brain calm down. It's nothing new. We create stories all the time. We just don't sit down and write them. Just for instance, I put this picture up and I said, think about if you lived alone. You were home, you lived alone, came home from work, your door is wide open. Before you even walk in your house, you've already created a story in your mind of what happened and what you're going to find when you get in the house, what you're going to do after you find your house ramshacked and your stuff gone. You're going to call the You've already gone through all of this. So you've created this scenario before you've even walked through the door. That's what we do. We create stories all the time. So it's nothing new. Again, making writing a part of your daily habit. You decide why you want to write. Why is it so important for you to tell this story? Once you decide why it's important, then it's easier for you to continue. For me, I wanted to write a story about a teacher because I'm a teacher, and I never read a story where the teacher was the main character. I read a story with a doctor, lawyer, all these people, nurse, but not a teacher. So that it was important for me to write that story. I really wanted it, not only for me, but I knew my coworkers would love it as well. So I made that a priority for me. I set a realistic goal. When I started writing, I had 2 children, a husband, and a job. I knew I was not about to sit down and write 2 hours after work. I wasn't going to sit down and write an hour after work. So I had to set a realistic goal. If I did a page, I celebrated that page because it was a page more than I did yesterday, or it's a page more than I had yesterday. So whatever it is, just make sure it's realistic for your lifestyle. Find an accountability partner. You all are already ahead of the game for that because you have each other. And try different methods of writing. You don't have to just type. Sometimes it helps to go from typing to handwriting. I've even found myself writing things on my cell phone. But if you switch it up some, maybe it'll make it a little better because it doesn't become dull. So this is our quick recap. Is to start where you're inspired, even if you're inspired at the end of the story. Observe your surroundings. Search outside the box for story ideas and for ideas to use in your story. And train your brain for writing. Are any questions about those?
No.
Nope. Okay. So tip number 5 is to let your characters sell your story. This is so very important because yes, the plot is important. The setting is important. The point of view is important. All of that makes a great story. But people fall in love with characters. That is if you develop a great character, even if she act outside the norm sometimes, people will forgive her if they love her. So imagine being at a party where everyone is boring. everyone is negative. How long are you really going to stay at this party? Not very long if you can help it. And that's the way people feel when they're reading a book. If your characters are boring, if your characters are negative, they all behave the same way, it's just nothing interesting to keep them there. So you have to make sure that you write what you would be interested in reading. If it's boring to you, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be boring to your readers. So have you ever heard a conversation and later realized that the people weren't talking about real people? So that's how I don't know. I know I was young, and we lived in the country. So my mom and my aunt were outside, and they were having this conversation about this man and all these things that he was doing and his wife, and like they were just really into it. And I was ear hustling because I wasn't supposed to be listening to adult conversations, but I was trying to figure out who are they talking about. It wasn't until the end of their conversation that I realized they were talking about The Young and the Restless and Victor Newman. And I was like, really? Like they were so into these people, like they knew them personally. But that's how it is. When you develop a good character, you feel like you know them and they are a part of your life. And you talk about them like that, and they tell other people, because that's what you want. You want people talking about your book so realistic that they're telling other people about it. Because no matter what anyone says, word of mouth is still the best form of advertising. So you need to create 3D characters, especially if you're writing fiction books. 3D characters are your characters that are so realistic. Everything they say, everything they do is ideal to who you created them to be. They're not just one-dimensional. They're not, because we aren't just one-dimensional. We aren't always happy. We aren't always sad. We aren't always nice. We aren't always mean. We have so many different personalities. That's a 3D character. So I'm binge watching Criminal Minds right now. So when I thought about creating 3D characters, these are the characters that came to mind, mainly because I'm watching them. You have all these different characters in this show, and they all are so very different, even though they have the same job. They're still very different. You have your nerdy character, you have your sex symbol character, you have your character who hardly ever smile, you have your mother character, you have your eccentric character. Like they're different. So even if I was talking with someone who watched Criminal Minds and I didn't even say their name, I just kind of gave their personality, they would know exactly who I'm talking about because they've created these people so well. And it's easier, I can say, for TV, of course, because you can see them. It's a little harder for books because your reader have to imagine a lot without seeing it. But it's not so far-fetched because I'm working on a script right now. And even with doing my script, I still have to share the background knowledge of my characters, the cast members. I still have to really shape them and make them different. So it still involves writing is what I'm saying. So even though the actors themselves bring a lot to the characters, it's still the writer's responsibility to make these people before the actors get to them. So tips for creating your 3D characters. Number one, which I do all the time, use people that you know. Use them to create your characteristics about them. Of course, you're going to change it up, but just some things about them. Like I have a friend who's a workaholic. She works all the time. She works very, very hard, and she's driven. But that's because she grew up poor, and she vowed that she would never do that again. She would never go back to that life again. She wanted better for her family. So I used her in the last book, actually. My main character was based around her. My main character was very driven. She was determined that she was going to be successful no matter what it took. So it's a really good idea to use people that you know, because you know them. You know why they act the way they act. You know what they would say in certain situations. Also, people watch. for gestures. And this is really, really important too, especially for men. I find it a little harder writing men characters because men are so different from us. They would not respond the way we would respond. They, their posture, their mannerisms are a lot different from ours. They really don't talk with their hands like we do. A lot of them, some of them don't. So their facial expressions are different. So you really have to people watch in order to make your everything, from the way they look to the way they dress to their responses, their gestures. Everything has to be realistic because your readers will know if it just doesn't go, if it doesn't fit with who you created your character to be. Also, you can use actors. Maybe there's an actor that you really, really like. Use them. Who knows that you use them? They probably used another actor to create that actor. So it's okay to use, to have examples. You don't have to just start from scratch when it comes to your characters. Use facial expressions and body language to communicate. 65% of our communication is non-verbal. If your character is angry, you don't always have to say she was angry. She may have her, her eyebrow may go up. Her body language may change to show that she's angry. The reader will know that she's angry just by her body language. And it's familiar for us because, like I said, it's what we're used to seeing. If my children, if they ask me a question and they already know the answer to it, I don't even have to answer. I just give them a look. And they already know that look means, okay, let me go and leave her alone. So you see what I'm saying? So it's something that we're familiar with. So you don't have to say everything. Show it. And your characters must have flaws. I made this mistake in my first book. My main character, she was too nice. And a lot of my readers said that. They were like, the story was really good, but I was waiting on her to get angry because there were instances in that story where she should have gotten angry, but I didn't let her get angry. And it wasn't realistic because had you found out some things that she found out, we would have gotten angry. So make sure they have flaws. Their flaw it doesn't always have to be a negative flaw either. Like I told you with my friend working a lot. That's a flaw because it takes away sometimes from her family. So just make sure that whenever you're creating them that they're not all one way. Make sure that their voice and their actions are true to who you created them to be. That's why you really have to, where they're from, if they have an accent, they're going to have that accent throughout your story. Their voice, especially things that they say, it depends on their age. Some things an older person will say, a younger person wouldn't say. That's why. So you really have to make sure that you're realistic with that. And they have to show growth. That's what your readers look for in your story. They look for your character to start out really, really flawed. And then she go through some things throughout your story that by the end of the story, she's still not perfect because she's still a human being. But they have seen where she has grown from the beginning of the story to the end of the story. And I'll give you an example with the book that I wrote that did put me on a bestsellers list. My character started out, she did not trust men at all. She was hurt by her father. She was hurt by most of the men that she thought that she was in love with. She didn't trust them. But throughout the story, you saw this guy chip away piece by piece at that wall that she built. And it wasn't something that just happened, it happened gradually. It wasn't something that just automatically happened. So there was a lot of back and forth. And just when you thought that he had made leeway with her, something happened to cause her to somewhat put the wall up again. Because if you notice in books and in movies, you always have where it starts out, the characters are introduced, and then they go through their plot, and then all of a sudden things are really good, but it never stays that way. The ball drops every single time. That either the relationship is over, something happened, the mom comes back to get the child, and it destroys the family. But some kind of way, that's your climax. And then some kind of way they rebuild and they put all this back together, and it's made them a better person. So they've gone through all this stuff to become the person that they are at the end of your story. So make sure you're able to show where your character has grown throughout your story. And you need to clearly define their strengths and their weaknesses. Your reader should know, like I said, without you saying it all the time, if my character's weakness is work, then my reader will know she's going to always be at work until something happens to make her want to stay home more, or make her, you know, draws her attention to something better and makes her a better person because of it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So I used Kimberly. I had to call and let her know that I was using her on this slide in case some kind of way it got out. I don't know how I would have, but anyway, I did. Because another good thing about having characters that are so realistic is you can carry that story for many, many, many books. People love Curtis Black. And they love, you know, they love to hate him. She wrote her first book in 2000, her last one in 2016. She has 14 books based on these characters. Now, of course, she's introduced more characters along the way. So that's why you don't just forget about your background characters. You have to give them life too, because they may be your main character in your next book, but your readers know enough about them to care about them in your next book. I'm telling you, series, readers love series. It's just like a TV show, just like Scandal. They ready for it. Every week they're ready for it because they want to know what's going on. That's how readers are when you have a good book and they invested in these characters. They want you to keep writing more. So make a list of people you know, some qualities about them that you can possibly use in your characters, with your characters. The next one is to focus on writing only. And I'm going to kind of breeze through this one. All this one is basically saying is you cannot write and edit and research at the same time. You cannot. When you are doing your rough draft, the only thing you're doing is writing. I don't care if you says is instead of are. Leave it alone. Just keep on going. We will fix that is when it's time to edit. Just write. So what you may want to do, because if it's going to drive you crazy, what you may want to do is choose a day, but not right now. Right now, your rough draft, just get it all out. After you've done your rough draft, then you go back, and I would choose a day for editing and a day for researching if you're using research in your story. One example I gave that I found that was really, really good, especially when it comes to research, is to save it for later. And this was the example. Say I was talking, because I did a lot of research on my last book because I never been to New York. So I had to watch YouTube videos, talk to people from New York, research New York, Google New York to try and make it as realistic as I can without actually going to New York. I spent so much time, I would type some, and then I'm over at YouTube. And then I come back and plug in what I found. Then I type some more, and then I'm Googling. And then I come back, and it took me so long to finish this book. So I found this tip out after I did the book was save the spot. Just put in bold letters, research sites on Fifth Avenue, and keep on going. Do not jump to YouTube and look at Fifth Avenue. That saves you from going back and forth because, again, with your brain, it's using different sides. You're going from creative to technical. And it's too much jumping around. If your words are flowing and you are in that creative mode, then stay there. Don't jump out and start editing or start researching. This is my friend Tanisha. I'm not sure if you all are familiar with Tanisha, but she is a manuscript evaluator. And it took Tanisha the longest time to write because she's so used to evaluating other people's manuscripts. So she's always in that editing mode that when she did decide to sit down and write her own story, it was hard because she was critiquing. She was too busy critiquing to write. So I told her basically what I'm telling you, Stop critiquing this story. Just write the story. You will have time to go back and critique it. And she did. Thank God she did, because she finally finished because unfortunately we lost Tanisha last year. She passed away out in October, and all she wanted to do was write. She just wanted to write her own book because she loved novels and she loved endorsing and going to book club. Like, she just loved everything literature. So to see her name on a book was all she really, really wanted. Unfortunately, she did not get that chance because, like so many of us, we always think we have the time. And Tanisha and I would joke all the time, not knowing what lied ahead of her. But, you know, we would be on the phone and it's like, girl, did you write today? Girl, no. Girl, you know we need to be writing. We just laughing about, you know, we need to be writing, but we doing everything. Oh, girl, I'm going to write tomorrow for real. I'm going to write tomorrow for real. It didn't. So, you know, eventually, like I said, when she did get sick, she had the time to just sit and focus on her writing. But I know Tanisha, and I know she would want me to tell every aspiring author, don't keep putting it off. If you have the desire, do it, because we just don't know. Unfortunately, we don't. And one thing I love is that your words will live forever. Even when you're gone, you still have your words, your children, your grandchildren, they still have a piece of you through your words, through your creativity. And I think that is a wonderful thing to be able to leave behind. So use the right tools. And here I'm just talking about different tools that you can use for writing with, you know, not just the paper pencil, not just the laptop or what have you. Novels, when I wrote my first book, I said, I'm not reading novels because I don't want anyone to say I stole their words and use it in my book. So if I don't read, I can't accidentally put anyone's work in my book. That is not the thing to do, because you get so, like I told you, the ideas. If you're stuck and you're reading a novel, something in that novel could help you finish, you know, keep going with your novel. You should read more actually while you're writing. Don't stop reading while you're writing. Keep reading. You won't steal their stuff. You know it's theirs. Change it. Make it yours. Journaling is really good because journaling lets you just write. You're not thinking about the people who's going to read this after you publish it. You're not thinking about all this other stuff in your head. You just writing. It's just for your eyes. Journaling helps again, you just flowing because you know that you're the only one that's going to see this. It helps your ideas. Out of the Alpha Word Smart, this is a word processor. It's probably about $20. The good thing about this word processor, it has no internet, it has no Facebook, it has no email. The only thing you can do with this is type. So if you're like me and you have a million browsers up while you're trying to type, it is very good to invest in this. All you're doing is typing. And it's so easy because after you're done, you plug it's a cord that goes from the word processor to the computer. You open up a blank Word document, plug it in there, press send, and all of your work go to your computer. It's genius. So if you are known to lose focus while you're writing because everything else is distracting you, then I would say shut down the computer, get you a word processor or an old-fashioned 5-subject notebook and get to writing. That's probably why they wrote more back in the day, because they had a typewriter. They didn't have all this stuff to distract them.
Yeah, you're right.
The other thing is a dragon. With the dragon, you speak into it. Now, this is good if you type slow. This is good if you handwrite your manuscript and ready to type it out. You can just speak it. You can dictate it, and the dragon will type it for you. Not really sure how much this one costs, though. Grammarly, I'm not sure if you heard of this. It's an editing program. Grammarly can go on your Word documents. Grammarly can go on email. If you install it on your computer, it will check your email, your Word document, your Facebook post. It checks everything. Of course, you won't need this until after you finish your rough draft. Don't turn Grammarly on while you are writing that rough draft. This one I just found out about too. It's an online and offline writing software, and it syncs with Google Docs and it syncs with your Dropbox. And you will not have the unfortunate mishaps that I've had of losing chapters after chapters because I forgot to save. So with this, it automatically syncs, it automatically saves. And I do know this is a subscription. I think it's like $7 a month or $10 a month, something like that. And Scrivener is really for, a lot of people use it for scripts, but you can also use it for novels. I know some authors who do use it for novels, and you see the Post-it notes. It helps you break down your scenes or your chapters. And once you're ready, you just combine it all together. And it also makes ebooks. It formats your ebooks for you. And the last one is to invest in mentoring. So I made it to the bestsellers list after. So I'd written 2 books. By my 3rd book, I was actually working with a mentor who was able to coach me through crafting my story, through making sure my characters were believable, and the plot, like she challenged me too, because my last book was a lot different from what I'm used to writing. She challenged me to step outside of me. You know, it's not me. These people they're not me. They wouldn't react the way I would react. They would say what I would say. So she really, really pushed me to do more. And it really paid off because I made it to the bestsellers list 3 times, I believe, in a row. I never did it on my own before. I was on a bestsellers list with anthologies with other authors, but just by myself. Like I said, it wasn't until I invested in a coach and had someone there to guide me, someone who'd been in the game for 20 plus years, who knew what to do, especially when it came to editing and publishing. She helped me through all of that. So I would highly recommend investing in a mentor, if at all possible, because it just makes the process a lot easier. And it makes the time go by faster, and you won't waste money like I did. Trying this out, trying that out. You know, you have someone there to tell you, don't do that. That's not the route to go, or what have you. So invest in a mentor is the last tip. And this was Miss Joyce. Miss Joyce, like me, made it to the bestsellers list once she invested in a mentor. So these are just different reasons you should have a mentor. It will fast track your way through the writing process, will motivate you to keep going, clear the path for you. You have any hiccups, any questions, you have someone right there to help guide you along. You have access to the knowledge that they've gained over the years, and you won't be so overwhelmed. You will really be able to enjoy the process of creating your story without the stress of the what ifs or what next. You won't have any of that because you have someone to tell you. It just makes it a lot easier, basically. So I'm going to end it here and turn my share off. I know that was a lot. Hopefully it was something you can use in your writing from here on. Please don't forget to write every day. Please don't forget when your brain try to put you in that comfort zone to push past that, recognize it for what it is, push past it and write anyway. Even if it's a couple sentences, write anyway, because you just want to make it a habit. You know habits. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. So that's really the main thing. If you plan on finishing this book in 2018, you're going to have to write. And you're going to have to do it often. So basically, you're just going to have to make the commitment to get it done. So do you all have any specific questions for me or anything about the webinar or not about the webinar?
I do.
Okay.
You said, I thought it was very interesting when you said, read at the same time you're writing.
Mm-hmm.
Because you read my mind. I do not read because I feel that reading distracts me.
Uh-huh.
And I feel like I get so involved in other people's stories that I don't want to absorb it unintentionally.
I know. I get it. I'm telling you, that's how I was. But that is not what you should do.
So you said actually it's okay to like read a novel and then you can put that down and start writing.
Oh yeah. But you know why? Because when I'm telling you, every single time when I would get stuck and I wasn't really sure where I wanted to go next with my story, if I picked up another novel, especially authors that I admire, and I read their work, they're going to either say something, the character's going to do something, like something is going to happen that make me think, oh, you know what? And it's not even the same thing, but it'll spark something. You know, that's what it does. It sparks something to help you finish your story. And while you're reading, you're paying attention to the way they're crafting their story. You're paying attention to their sentence structure, to words that they use, how they describe things. So you're still learning and you're using that in your story. Not exactly what they're doing, but it's helping you to write your story. So yeah, read as much as you can. You won't steal their stuff.
Is it true that no one owns a title or like a song title or book title or?
No. There are so many Dirty Little Secrets books out there. Because my first book is Dirty Little Secrets. Unless you just have no one own it, unless you just have a unique title. Like my last book is Double Down and Dirty. Few months later, I saw another Double Down and Dirty. Now the odds of somebody just coming up with Double Down and, that's not a normal, it's like Dirty Little Secrets, I can see. But Double Down and Dirty, I knew for sure she got that title from me. But there's nothing I can do about it because we don't own words. It's just, we just don't.
But you do own your story.
Yes. And the only way, you copyright your story. And really, you can go through the Library of Congress to have your story copyrighted, but your story as you're typing it, it's copyrighted because it's already time-stamped on your computer. So you are already able to prove that you wrote this story. So if someone else come and publish the exact same story, you can show where you started writing this story in 2000 or what have you, and theirs came out years later. So, it's still easy to prove that it's copyrighted to you.
Mm-hmm. Well, what if you write using a notebook or something rather than a computer or something that times?
Now that's different because if someone gets it, then no matter what, it's gonna have to go through the computer. So even if you're writing on a notebook, you're gonna have to type it in order to publish it. So it's still time-stamped to you. I mean, unless someone steals your notebook before you're able to type it, then you have a whole nother set of problems. Because then, you can't really prove that.
Do you email yourself?
Oh, yeah. Yes, definitely. I email myself, like I said, when you save it, of course, it has the date and the time that it was saved. So it's already copyrighted. You can, like I said, you can still do it. You can still pay to have it done and in the Library of Congress. But even if you didn't, it's still copyrighted to you. So you are still able to put copyright in your name or your publishing company.
What is an outline? Why is it important? And how do you develop one?
Now, this is good.
Do you have one?
No, I don't. I do not write with an outline. And let me tell you why. For me, an outline is too structured. Mm-hmm. When I sit down to type, I'm typing what I see. What I see playing in my head. I can hear the characters. I can hear the dialogue. I'm thinking too hard if I sit down and try and say, okay, this is point A, this is point B. It just takes away from me the creativity of me being able to just sit down and just let it flow however it's meant to flow. So I've never used an outline. But some people have to stay, to stay focused.
Okay.
Yeah.
I need one. I was what you thought.
I mean, I think, if you feel like you need it, definitely. And all you will be putting is your ideas, maybe you have chapter 1. You have an idea for chapter 1. And all it is just jotting down notes. What's going to happen. Now, what I would do is think about who's in chapter 1. What's the overall, what are they supposed, what's going to happen in chapter 1? Of course, chapter 1 is just the, introduction of your characters. So where are they meeting? I would think about, where are my characters? Who are my characters? And what's going to happen in this chapter? And then, it's very general. Chapter 2, where are they moving to next? Who's in this scene? What are they talking? What's happening in this scene? One thing, make sure you do, and this is so important, your chapters, you don't really want to have long chapters. People, attention spans are so short. If you have 5 to 7 pages a chapter, that is good. Because let me tell you what happened. Like with my first novel, I probably had 5 pages. But what happens when people are reading and they, you always end the chapter with a cliffhanger because you want them to keep reading. So once I left it with a cliffhanger and they look at chapter 2 and say, okay, it's only 5 pages. I'm going to go on and read it. And they'll read chapter 2. There's another cliffhanger. Chapter 3, only 5 pages. We're going to read that. And I heard that so many times. I kept saying I was going to stop, but the chapters were so short. I just kept going and I just kept going. That's how you really, because if they see a chapter and it's like 20 pages, then they're like, okay, no, not tonight. Too tired. So you really want your chapters to be short. You want to get in with the bang. You get in with the bang. You deliver your message. You leave with the bang. And you just continue that cycle. So every chapter should begin with the and end with the to make them keep going.
So I noticed that most of your pointers were geared toward novels, nonfiction, I'm guessing. So what is your advice for like a testimony, inspiration, or the political piece or journaling? Because you wouldn't follow character building when you're writing about your testimony or inspirational. So how does that flow? And what's the difference? Is that a whole different night?
Not really. The only difference is when you're doing your testimonials, it's personable to you. So you're not really concerned about, your biggest thing is the message and how you're getting the message across. And you're still making sure you're using language that people can easily understand and, just absorb. So with the testimonials and the journals and any of that, you still want, especially with journals, because people really like reading journals because it's almost like being nosy, but you can really do it. It's not, you don't have to sneak to read this. So people really get into journals. So I would do it just like a regular journal. Start with the dates and then, write your journal entry. And you're writing from a first person point of view because it's about you. So yeah, the difference between that is you're not worried about the plot. You're not worried about, the characters, but it still has to be, like I said, interesting enough that they'll want to keep reading it so that they can get the message. And the message has to be very clear so that, your idea of what you want them to leave with this, they've left with it. So when people are telling you, oh, I read this and it really inspired me and it motivated me to do such and such and such, then you know that you got your point across. That's exactly what you wanted it to do.
Okay. Are you still a kindergarten teacher?
I'm not. I'm an instructional specialist now.
Okay.
So I work with I teach teachers.
Okay. I could tell. When you talked about the Alpha Smart, I'm laughing falling on the floor because kids may not enjoy Alpha Smarts, but I can see as an adult,
Yes.
It would be so helpful not to have a lot of distractions. So out of all the stuff you gave a lot of great information, but that is the one that I'm gonna take back with me to say, yes, I'll keep from doing a lot of different things. Yeah. But you gave lots of really good, clear points, and I really like how after the first 4 points, stopped, did a recap, a good teacher thing to do. But no, really, because you knew our brains were just
it's a lot. Yes.
Give us a break and then go back to it. So I found this very, very helpful. And just
good.
Another educator just like, yes, okay. just the right tempo and everything. All good.
Thank you. Thank you. Now the Apple Smart go to Amazon.
Okay.
That's what they are. And they aren't expensive.
They're not expensive.
That's a little too.
What is a short novel called?
Say it again.
A short novel.
Short books. It would with the short novel, short stories.
Novelette.
Well, that's different from a short story.
Not a short story, a short novel.
Oh, a novelette, a novella.
Novella. That's the word.
So a novella is what, like 70? I mean, not 70, 40, I think. 30 to 40,000 words, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
A full novel is 80.
A full novel, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And a short story is very short. It can be 4,000 words.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really good. Short stories, I highly recommend because, they can be a little more difficult too because it is short and you do have to make your point very quick. Short stories, you're not going to have a lot of characters because you don't have time for all these characters. So you really want to focus on one or two characters. But if you have a story and you're not really sure if you can carry it out into a full novel, then I would do short stories and publish them on Amazon. And it'd just be an ebook. Of course, they wouldn't get a paperback or a hardback. But if you publish enough short stories, the main thing is getting your name out there. And if people read your short story and they really like your short story, you publish another one, they'll read that one. Then when you get to a full novel, they already know your work. They already know they like your work, and they will support you. Readers are very loyal people. That's why it's very important to impress them from the jump, because they can be harsh too. And sometimes they won't give you a second chance to show that you've grown. So it's very, very important to get out there. You have to go out with a bang so that they can share your work with other people, not your actual book, which I've had people to do and tell me, I gave your book to my aunt and she gonna give it to someone. Like, can you stop giving it around? Let them buy. The whole purpose is for them to buy the book.
Where are you from, Lorna?
I'm originally from a very, very tiny town called Vornado, Louisiana, but I now live in Baton Rouge.
Oh, okay. I was in Atlanta. I knew somewhere down south.
Right.
Yes, I'm in Louisiana.
Okay. All right. Well, very interesting.
Very. Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So many things, developments have been happening in my life over the past couple weeks, months. So the Holy Spirit told me to write my story.
Mm-hmm.
Inspirational. How God just changed me, motivated me, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Point where, I'm adopted and I probably got a hit now. We may be related.
Mm-hmm.
So do you, as on a story for yourself, do you do the chapters short like you were saying with the novels and stuff?
I would.
Okay.
I still would, because again, they are so, you don't want them to feel overwhelmed.
Right.
And I just know from a reader perspective, I love to read, but if I have a book, if it's too thick, I'm probably not going to read it. If the chapters are too long, I may, I still read the book, but I may not get through a chapter. And if you leave off on a chapter, and I think about, our lives, I can't pick up a book every day. So if I stop in the middle of a chapter, then I'm probably lost. So I'm gonna have to go back, and it becomes more work than pleasure. So if I can at least finish a chapter and then start a new chapter the next day, then I'm good, because I'm onto something new. I'm not in the middle of it. So you always want it, you want them to be able to finish, not the whole book, but at least a few chapters in the city. Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
We all have a story to tell. We all, we do. We've all gone through some more than others, but I just feel like everyone has a story and a message that can make a difference. That's the whole purpose. That's the purpose of our messages, to be able to inspire and make a difference in the lives of others. So that's why, if he gave it to us, we are meant to share it, whether it's in the form of a book, whether it's in, with public speaking, however.
Right.
It's meant to be shared. Like I said, what I like about the book is your message is left behind. Even while you're gone, your message is still left behind.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. That's good.
Thank you all. I enjoyed this.
So we meet every Monday, and I thought this was a wonderful change, because we usually write. Like, we're just getting comfortable with writing. That's our purpose. But then everybody have their own individual projects.
Right.
Our goal was to eventually come together every Monday, say hi at the door, sit down, write for 2 hours, and then say good night. That's our goal.
That's awesome.
So this was perfect timing to introduce you to the group, so that that would give us some direction.
Yes.
Individual direction, because we all want to do different things.
Right.
But it's still with writing.
Yes. Yes. That's awesome. I love that.
Now, before you go, you said Double Down and Dirty. That's one of your books.
Yes.
Okay, and you have several others.
Right. The first one is Dirty Little Secrets.
Dirty Little Secrets is the first one. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And Double Down and Dirty.
Mm-hmm.
Second one.
And I have a sequel to Dirty Little Secrets.
Okay.
Which is part 2. And if you go to Amazon and just type in L.A. Lewis, L.A. Lewis, all of my books will be on my author page.
Okay. I like their name too. So that's kind of my name, kind of.
Kind of your name?
Because my middle name is Lavelle, Lavel, and my last name is Lewis.
Okay.
So when I saw it, I was like, that would have been a nice pen name, because it flows. That's so beautifully. Wow.
Thank you.
I like that.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure meeting you.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure meeting you all as well. I really enjoyed it. Hopefully Princess will have me back.
Yes.
Another Monday.
Right.
Yeah. Definitely be in touch. And also, we got to talk even more, so I'll be in touch.
Okay.
Yeah, because we have 3 other people. When they find out what we did, they're going to be jealous.
And this is recorded, so I can send it to you if you want me to.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I certainly will.
You're a blessing.
Thank you. That's all I want to do. Be a blessing.
Absolutely. You are.
Thank you all so much. And I'm going to send this, I'm going to email it, and she'll get it to you.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. You all have a good night.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Wow. Oh my God.